I guess, dark techno. One of the tracks of my first EP, because at the time I was producing only like seriously for a year maybe, or basically I graduated from university, and then I took 1 year off to just work on production. And after that whole year, this EP was my first EP on Lenska was the result of that year. And I just basically had no idea like how people would react to this or to my music, because it was the first time that I would put my music out publicly. But then I saw all these videos surfacing from people playing it at like huge festivals and in clubs and stuff, and then that's when it first hit me for the first time that people are dancing and to my music or playing my music. And for me, I will never forget this feeling. Like I made this music in my attic on my computer, and then the next week, like there's thousands of people dancing to it at a festival. So that was quite a crazy realization and a good feeling. Yeah. USB. It started since I was a kid. There was always a lot of music in my household. When I started at university, I had so much free time that I basically started to look up like how does DJing work? What does a mixer do? You have all these buttons on a mixer, but what do all these buttons do? You know, like this was fascinating. Spending most of my time online, looking like how synthesizers work, how turntables work, and then I would eventually also buy my first mixer, my first turntables, and then I started practicing. There was just this love for music, and during my studies, it's materialized into starting to learn how to DJ. Big warehouses. Like an artist like Fela Kuti, he's like an African artist, and like he makes these tracks that are like 20 minutes long, and so it's very like tribal in a way, and like these rhythms they're repeating and like they evolve slowly. It kind of reminds me in a way also of techno, because you have these rhythms and these small changes, but also like artists like Goran Begovic is like he's from Eastern Europe. He does a lot of soundtracks also for music, for movies. I'm also a big movie fanatic, so to link the movies and music together, it works always really well for me. And it's also what I often remember about movies is which music they used. And Goran Begovic is like one of those musicians who made super good music for super good films. Also, I really like German like pop from the 80s, I guess. Maybe it's not pop, but someone like Klaus Nomi or Nina Hagen. I think both of them are classically trained singers, but they did like some in the techno sets. Look at these voices; they just like overpower the rest of the music. So it's really nice to combine it with techno. Yeah, of course. After the pandemic is over, I will bust out the music. For production, that's actually quite easy, because I used to be stuck for a long time in the early phases. I always was hitting this ceiling, and I couldn't progress further. And one of those reasons why I wasn't progressing was that I was getting every plugin that was available, because I thought like if I get all the plugins, my sound would get better. But the thing was, I wouldn't really study these plugins. I would just get them and like play around with them, try some presets, but I would not actually know what I was doing. And then one day I read online, like someone gave me, like just a random guy online said this on a forum, that it would be helpful if you just learn your DAW before you start downloading all these plugins. That's what I did, and that's actually the first time that I started making progress, is because I took time to understand the tools that I already had in front of me, instead of putting all my energy into looking for new tools. And especially with DAWs like Ableton today, like the possibilities are basically endless. So yeah, you don't need much more than just a computer and I guess like music to play, or regarding music to play, maybe even like sometimes like a really good tool is super nice and you can play this like in any set, but people wouldn't really know that this is like a track because there's maybe not like a really clear lead or something like this. But still, it's like a really good loop or something. Then I would play this a lot. So maybe this would be like a favorite track, but just to name like one thing would be very difficult, I think. That's easy, actually. For me, the hardest thing is there's no one that's gonna hold your hand. Like, you have to do this yourself. That's also, I think, why only some people make it, I guess, is because you need to be very driven and you have to have a lot of motivation. And that's what I also noticed with myself, that you're getting into these phases where you feel like you're stuck or you can't progress. But the only thing you can do is just like keep going, and eventually you will progress. But you have to have the will to get over those difficulties. So that's, I guess, the hardest thing, is to just be able to do this also mentally, to get yourself over the difficult periods. For sure, there are a couple of venues in Belgium where I'm from that are really close to my heart. Like the first venue I ever played at was in Antwerp. It was called Emma. It was this like 200 people, 200 capacity venue. And I played there my first couple of gigs, and of course they were super memorable. And also they had like their own crowds, which was like, yeah, like not really the mainstream crowd, but everyone was like very, like most of the people were quite interesting, and there were also some people that were studying in Antwerp from abroad that would go there. So you had all these different cultures together as well. So that was very nice. I recently played in Croatia, in Zagreb, and in like this massive warehouse. Yeah, that was also quite crazy, something I will never forget. And to dance or to party, yeah, for me personally, as I guess many others, I really fell in love with techno in Berkheim. And I try to go there as much as I can. Also living in Belgium, I try to visit Berlin as much as possible, just to go there. That really depends. Sometimes I sit down for like a sound design session, I would say, and then I would just experiment and go with the flow. But at other times, I sit down and I want to make a track. And then it's very important for me to have a direction. Otherwise, most of the time it goes nowhere if you don't have a direction. That's for me personally, at least. So, and this can be a small thing. So just like one sample, you can have a sample you found somewhere, and then just go start building on this sample and go from there. Or it can be something completely different. But just sitting in front of a computer and just thinking, okay, I'm gonna make a track now, that doesn't really work for me. Like, there has to be some kind of direction. So yeah, when I started with Ableton, I was using just like the built-in synthesizers, because as I said before, I didn't want to download all these extra plugins, so I just started with the built-in ones, like Operator and Analog. So much of my music is made with beats in the beginning. Um, Now I'm also using Serum a lot, um, which it's like a wavetable synth. You also have a wavetable synth in Ableton, like a built-in one. But this one has like some other features, some extra features. For me, I like both, so there's no real preference. I mean, there is a difference in workflow. I think that's the biggest difference today is if you work with analog gear, it's of course very different than if you're working in front of a computer, and it can be nice to like change it up once in a while or to break away from the computer and do something on a machine. But sound-wise, I don't think there's a huge difference anymore. So inspiration, you can get this basically from anywhere, or at least that's how it works for me. Um, I like to go, for instance, on walks before I go to the studio. So maybe I hear a particular sound or I see something which inspires me to work towards a certain atmosphere. Um, yeah, actually, I've heard other artists talk about this, and in the beginning, I always thought it was strange that you could get inspiration from anything. But basically, later in the music making process, it became much more clear to me that this is in fact possible. For instance, even like let's say like I meet some friends, and I have a talk with them, and like the way they show their energy, or like their energy can also be like a really big motivation to go towards something.